We should be there. Hello? Give us a second. It's a little quiet in here because nobody's here. Okay, there are a few. They just got really quiet. We got to start miking the room. So that would kill all discussion really quick.
I think you can actually hear them somewhat decently.
Hey, it's working.
First try.
Test yours.
Hey, it's working. First try.
Oh, good job.
Beautiful.
Good job. All right. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Elaine. Hello, Tim.
Hi.
Not you, Tim. Different Tim. But Tim said hi to Tim. So there you go.
Timception.
Timception. Multiverse Tim said hi.
Yes. And I believe Dave and Judy are watching from home, too. We just don't see their names
Well, we
popping
don't know
up.
if they're on. Yeah, Dave tells you that so that he thinks.
Yeah, you know what, Dave? Throw a comment in there to prove it.
Yeah.
I'm glad my name doesn't pop up.
Just comment
All
on
right.
which pastor has the best hair, and we'll know.
Tanner?
If they
It's
say
still going to
me-
say Brent.
If they say me, that's how bad your hair is. You're setting yourself up there. Beard is included. If you like the lipless beard.
Yeah, I'm undecided.
Kara must? Do you ask her?
She said she liked it.
Okay.
I'm not convinced.
Did she have a look of sympathy when she said that? All right.
Let's go to the Bible study.
We're in Matthew chapter 5. That's where we've been, and that's where we'll be. We are getting through the Sermon on the Mount, but there is just so much to go through, and it's great because they're timeless truths, and every week through the discussion we bring it to today, and man, we got a lot more to go. However, we started with the Beatitudes, and we made it through that section. That was you and Kevin.
Yes.
And then we've been going through the "You've heard this, but I tell you" section, what I call the remix section, where Jesus remixes those Old Testament, brings out the intent behind the actions when it comes to sin. Jesus says, you know what? If we can start with the sinful mindset and intention, we can nip it in the bud. How many parents used to say that all the time? Okay. But Jesus, let's get to a point before the action's committed. Let's not, yes, you've heard don't kill, but let's talk about hating your brother, because if we deal with that, then we're going to not get to the point of killing. And so that's what Jesus has been doing with divorce and marriage and taking oaths. And we've just got a few more in that section. I think we'll get through it tonight. And then Jesus is just going to keep, I mean, you just got to imagine, and Jesus didn't just preach this once. There's also what we call the Sermon on the Plain, Sermon on the Mount. Why do we call them the Sermon on the Mount? Because it said Jesus went up on a small mountainside and preached. Why do we call it Sermon on the Plain? It says Jesus went to a flat area and began to teach. And so these sermons, that's how they got their name. But I'm sure Jesus preached this message or iterations. The Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, they overlap, but there are some unique parts. Are you at a point yet where you've preached the same sermon both in Oakdale?
No, because you don't want to hear the Oakdale sermon.
Okay, fair enough.
That was year one of ministry.
Well, there have been a few times here at Grace Point where I'm like, oh, that passage would go really well with the previous week's sermon, and I've already preached on it, and I'll pull up those notes, but never once do I preach it exactly the same. I'll add part, or let's change that, or this would be more relevant for this church, and so it's the same thing with Jesus with different crowds. We talked about this is probably a more poor crowd because Jesus is saying, you've heard it was said, or people long ago said. I mean, Jesus, he's not dumbing it down. He's just talking at their level. If Jesus was talking to an educated crowd, he said, you've read that, or you've been taught that. He's not saying that. He's saying you've heard it was said. And so, and I think there is still a crowd maybe less of a crowd like in our country today than maybe when some of us were younger, but there is a crowd that has heard things of the Bible. You've heard, people know the golden rule. Some people may not know love your neighbor as yourself came from the Bible, but they've heard these things from the Bible. And so very similar to what Jesus is doing here, but just a very, very powerful and still relevant sermon. Greatest sermon ever recorded here. And who knows, maybe he had a better one, but the disciples were too enamored to write it down. Who knows? So,
Yep.
Anyway, we're going to begin with prayer before we jump in here. Prayer points that we're praying for. We are praying for our church to be reunited, refocused, unpaused, and to become all we can be now, which would look different than our church before a pandemic. But during a pandemic, we want to be all we can be. It may look different. We don't totally know what that would look like, but we want to get everyone's hearts and minds with a mindset of let's recommit to the church, let's be the church, and God is going to make that path once our hearts are in it. And so we're praying for that, and then we're also praying, brand new prayer point this week. We've been going through all the ministries, and we're almost done, but we're on youth. And so we're praying for the youth. We're praying for Kara. We're praying that the youth can be drawn closer to Jesus, that they can bring friends to Jesus, that they can bring families. As a youth pastor, I think one of the most special things is when you see a teen get invited by a friend. They start coming on Wednesdays, that teen starts coming on Sundays, and then mom comes with that teen, and then mom and dad and brother, and pretty soon a family's in the membership class, but it was a teenager who led their family to. I've seen that happen many times over the years, and it's just special. So we just want to pray for the teens. We want to pray for Kara and the sponsors, and she had a few had to step away, and so she could use a couple more sponsors working with the youth. But she's got 3 that are that just fit perfect as far as what they bring to the table. And so anyway, we're going to be praying for the youth. Also, we want to pray for Pastor Gordon. I don't know if you've heard, but he tested positive for COVID. So Pastor Gordon, if you're watching, we just know you're being prayed for, and both for you and protection for your wife as well, and that this will be a process that is you can get through relatively easy or very easy. We'll go for very easy. Should we go for
Sounds
very
good.
easy? Okay. So any other prayer requests before we head into prayer? Anybody got something hot off the press? What's that? Jeff Halesto?
His biopsy is tomorrow.
Oh, it's tomorrow.
Okay.
So Jeff is waiting to see if a mass on his pancreas, and he did give permission to share this, is benign or cancerous, and it's in a very, very vulnerable spot if it's cancerous. But we're praying for victory and that it is benign. So I'm glad he was able to get that quickly, because he found out about this mass like Friday at 5 o'clock or 4:30. And if you want to be miserable with anything medical, find out something Friday at 4:30 when everyone's going home for the weekend, But that's good he got in. So we want to continue praying for Jana as well, who's going through her treatments. She had a rough weekend, but they were able to help her, and she's in much better spirits this week. So anything else before we... Okay. Well, join us in prayer. Tanner, why don't you open, and why don't you pray for the church and Jeff, and I'll pray for the youth and Jana and Pastor Gordon. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
God, thank you for bringing each of us here tonight. And as you've asked us to pray, God, we just want to bring these individuals before you tonight. God, we just want to lift up our brother Jeff. And God, would you just bring a healing touch to his body right now?
Right.
And Jesus, we've witnessed you heal in Scripture. We've witnessed you heal in our lifetime. God, would you heal in the name of Jesus today? God, would he hear good news after this biopsy tomorrow? God, would you just hold up this family, both Jeff and Linda, and God, we just pray for their kids as well, as I know so heavy on Jeff's heart is the love for his wife and for his kids. And God, would you just be so near and dear to that family, and would you use this church, would you use other believers as well to love on this family and just be the hands and feet of Jesus to them. God, we also want to continue our prayer for Grace Point, God, that you would bring us to the place that you desire us to be. God, giving us wisdom to know what doing ministry and doing church is supposed to be right now, and not just in the future, and not just the same things we've always done. God, that you would give us wisdom how to change and how to move forward to do things right now. As we want to be reaching out to our community right now, we want to be discipling and having fellowship and having all the aspects of the church now. God, would you guide us? And would you just move our hearts to be ready for what that looks like?
And Lord, we lift up our teenagers who are meeting right now. And Father, would you just make yourself known? Let your Holy Spirit just make itself known. Let those teens experience something real, something they can identify as a loving God who is after their hearts, Lord. I pray that the worship is authentic and real, and that those teens who know you can just be a witness to those who don't. And Lord, just prepare Kara's heart for the message you've laid on it. And Father, use all you've gifted her with to be able to teach and just deliver the gospel to those kids, Lord. And for the adult sponsors that are in there, Lord, let the relationships they've been fostering continue to grow and be strong. And Lord, we just ask that you would find other people that have a gift for communicating with youth, Lord, that you can bring into that ministry, Lord. So just bless that ministry. We pray a blessing over Pastor Gordon. We pray for his body. We pray that he can get through this easily, Lord, and that he is not hindered physically, Lord, but just be with him, get him through, and protect Naomi as well, Lord. But Father, just be present in this situation, Lord. Father, you called them to ministry long ago at this church, and they're continuing still in that ministry in such beautiful ways and supportive ways, Lord. So just bless them. And Father, we lift up our sister Jana, and Father, please give her strength, give her hope, give her wisdom and direction, Lord, and may her family and friends and church family continue to rally around her. Lord, let her always see your hand in everything and just build up her faith and hope in you. We pray these things, Lord, and Father, we ask a blessing on this Bible study now. Let these timeless, powerful words of Jesus just reach us where we're at, whether we're at home or in this classroom. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, so Matthew 5. Tanner, I think it's okay today, but I think you need to put the books under that. I look like a Muppet sticking up over the little, like Frank Oz is down here or something like that. But yeah.
And that's bad.
Yeah. I guess I can hide if I say something. Anyway, okay, well, let's jump in. We're at Matthew 5, and the first section we're going to look at, and I'm going to have some questions for you, but is verse 38 is where we're starting. So Matthew 5, 38. Tanner, why don't you read that whole section, and then we'll just break it down, but read 38 through 42.
All right. You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you.
So right off the bat there, we get two famous sayings, eye for an eye and turn the other cheek. I think in my lifetime, tell me if you would agree, I've heard eye for an eye quoted more than turn the other cheek. Isn't it funny how the one that Jesus was trying to move us past is the one that is probably the most better known of these two? That's a shame. It should be the one that Jesus was asking. But so right there, you heard it said, so it came from the Old Testament. So if you want to flip back, Exodus, that is the second book of the Bible. And we're Exodus chapter 21. We'll wait till the pages stop turning. 21, starting with verse 22. And we're going to have Tanner read 22 through 25. And this isn't a case where it just says, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Like, there's a pretty specific scenario for this. But then the people of Jesus' day, what their problem was is they would take something of the commands and they would take them their own direction. If they just stuck to the commands and stuck to the intention of the commands and the spirit of the commands and the heart of the commands, Jesus would not have to be remixing anything, but this is the case. So look at this. You may not have ever really looked at where eye for an eye came from, but it's pretty violent and sad. Okay, go, Tanner.
Here we go. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman...
Okay, let's stop right there.
Jeez.
So it doesn't necessarily say they're fighting a pregnant woman, but you're in a fight.
It makes it sound like this is a common scenario.
And
like,
a pregnant woman
when you're
gets
fighting
hit.
And you accidentally hit a pregnant woman?
Well, I tell you what.
I know.
Well, you know how movies have certain tropes that are popular during certain eras? Me growing up in the 80s, always seems like movies or TV shows had the bar fight. Like, the Dukes of Hazzard always had a bar fight. And just everyone is getting knocked and stuff. So I don't know if... I mean, you think about it in high school, what happens when there's a fight? The crowd forms. Maybe that goes back to Jesus' day, but it's a pretty big brawl, I assume the pregnant woman, unless she was trying to get in the way and stop the fight, and I don't know, but but the fact that Moses had to, let's go ahead and put this down because this keeps happening and we got to stop this.
And then we're laughing.
It's one of those things where it's so horrible you laugh. Okay,
Indeed.
I'm not thinking it's funny. Okay,
That's good.
Go ahead. Start over. Read it. I'll try not to make you stop.
So, if people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman...
Any verse that starts that way, if you read that youth group, you've got the attention of every kid in there.
Don't make me read that again.
I lied, didn't I?
You did.
Said I wouldn't stop you, but go ahead.
This is the last time. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and bruise for bruise.
And just so you know, it says she gives birth prematurely. What translators guess that means, even though it's a very unfamiliar word that's used, is miscarriage most likely. So if she's hit and then they're just saying delivery early, most likely that means a miscarriage is delivered early. But look at that. I mean, I don't want to make a list because that would be pretty dark for a Bible study, but life for life is pretty obvious. Mm-hmm. Eye for an eye, that makes me think of the Christmas story. You'll shoot your eye out with the Red Ryder BB gun. Tooth for tooth, okay, that's pretty easy to understand.
The Christmas story, they got their tongue stuck on them.
That's right. Oh, it doesn't say tongue for tongue, but tooth for tooth, most likely getting punched. Hand for hand, foot for foot, and then we're getting into burn for burn. If you're lighting someone's house on fire or what, and then wound for wound and bruise for bruise. So a lot more than eye for eye, tooth for tooth. I'm sure Jesus, okay, I say that, you know what I'm talking about. You didn't want to list all these things, but so it starts out with a scenario which basically, that's probably in there not because it's common, but because even if it is indirect, like you didn't mean, you were fighting someone else, but the cause of your actions, a consequence was someone was hit. Well, now you have to pay for that, you know. And what's important to know is what you're having here, this isn't being told to one, this isn't Moses talking to Troy, you know, on the side of Mount Sinai. This is Moses talking to a crowd. This is a crowd control command. And that is very important. And I think that's why that's important to understand as we lead to what Jesus is doing, because a part of this, a lot of these laws, some of the ones we've been talking about, were for the Israelite people. But at this point, individuals are taking these commands, parts of these commands, and doing what they want with them in their life. And so this originally is a crowd control. This command is not for individuals. This is really a command for the judges and the magistrates, the people who are deciding. You know, it's like, okay, people, here's the policy. When these fights break out, you do something like cause a miscarriage. Well, you know, the way we're doing this as a people journeying across the desert is it's eye for eye, it's tooth for tooth, it's hand for hand. It's, you know, this is how we will rule in judicial manners. And that's what this was for. And that's basically, this was the law. And I know a lot of times we just think that's the old commandment law, but it was the law in that judges used the Old Testament to make rulings. And so this would have been the ruling for judges and magistrates. And so, you know, where do we see kind of think about this question. Where do we see kind of an eye for eye judgment mentality in the world today? Even if it isn't literally this happened now, the exact same thing, but something of equal impact is your penalty. Like where do we can anyone think of anything today like
when you see news posts about like murders that happened or crime or something that was committed, that's where I think of like on social media.
Right. Well, thinking of that, maybe this will kind of explain what I'm talking about. You're right, we see murders, but what is an eye for an eye judgment with murder? That's only allowed in some states. Death penalty. See what I'm saying? That is exactly eye for an eye. You know, but a serial killer may have multiple kills, but they can only kill him once, you know, but that is a literal, the states where that's still allowed, you know, the death penalty, the electric chair. Is that what they currently use for that, for capital punishment?
Even before, like if you see like a news article posted, like if you look in the comments section, like the person may not have even gone to trial yet, but the general public is already
condemned them. No, that is for sure. That, I mean, and there are people who have been proven innocent, but their reputation, especially if it's a celebrity, they might as well have done it, you know, because everyone's.
Well, you just think about cancel culture, and if someone says the wrong thing, then everyone else gets to say whatever they want about that person. And
I would actually say that is less like eye for an eye, because it's more like spec for log. You know, it's like the penalty is too large, especially if nothing's been proven. Any other things anyone can think of where eye for an eye, tooth for tooth? Certainly with parenting, you know, if you took their cookie, well, now you don't get a cookie for dinner. That kind of.
And now Dad gets to eat the cookie.
Is that how it works? So parenting, if one child does something, well, that, you know, you're going to have that same punishment.
Similar, it isn't an eye for an eye, but people take people to court to have them pay them back for what they feel like the crime was worth.
Right.
There are so many things, money has nothing to do with it.
Right.
But that's their motive.
Yeah, same thing with being penalized for vehicle violations and stuff. You know, it's not, but it's this value of what they think it's worth. And we're going to talk a little bit about court stuff in here, but that's the general idea. You're trying to find you're trying to shape an eye that will match that eye, you know. And so, yeah, so it still exists, you know, and that concept certainly exists in jobs and schools and everything where the punishment will fit the crime. You know, it will be a similar eye shape as what was committed. So, yeah. How can you see, and this is kind of a deep question, how can that command be corrupted if it is taken from being on a crowd control level to I'm going to use eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth as my own personal way of dealing with others? How can that be corrupted?
Well, sometimes the way you see things, like your perception of what happened, can be, I mean,
right.
There's two sides to every story, but your perception might be worse than what was actually intended or what.
Right. Yeah. Where one people's taking what happened way worse. Yeah. And so this is owed, or this should be your punishment. But you're like, wait, that wasn't that big a deal. And it's just difference. That's absolutely, yeah, that's right. How else could it be corrupted? Like, what are some things that if I did back to someone what they did to me, I mean, if a judge is ruling eye for an eye, like you're saying, that at least makes sense in a society. But where could I really do evil with that in my own life?
Because you're always judging the person, or
right,
and you're always holding them to a lower standard than what they know that they can do, and what they can, what they want to do, or you know, whatever the case is, but in your own eyes, you don't, you know, you only see them over here,
right,
and really they're up here,
right,
and so you're just gonna you know, see them in that area,
right,
and it doesn't matter what it is,
right. Well, let me give you an example. Let's say Tom lies to me. What could I justify doing to Tom? Lying. Because eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. Tom lied to me. I found out Tom lied to me, and I'm not telling Tom lied to me, but I get to lie to Tom. I'm going to put that in my pocket. Mm-hmm. You know, Tanner cheated me. Well, I get to cheat him back because eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Troy didn't forgive me, so I ain't going to forgive Troy for something. You know what I'm saying? So it gets to where this, you know, well, that person didn't treat me lovingly, so I don't have to treat. It's really saying whatever wrong I've done, I now get to do wrong.
Which you think in your mind is an eye for an eye, but I would assume most of the time the person wronging you in the first place was not premeditated. Maybe it was, but if they're wronging you unpremeditatively, and then you're just holding on to that and saying, well, I now have this premeditated wrong that I can act at any time. It's really more than...
Right.
Well, then it's causing you to keep score, too. Well,
yeah.
Like if this person did, like,
causing us to keep score of people. Yeah. Keep a record of wrongs, which love does not do. So, absolutely. And all of these, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, they are all the results. They're like these... this damage has been done. They're like physical, real damage that you could say this was done, now this is the penalty. But if we're taking and using this for ourselves, it really, you know, it really can feed into this ill intent towards others that Jesus is trying to fight against.
Romans 12:17 says, not to return evil for evil.
Right,
and
right.
So, you know,
absolutely,
we need to remember, no matter how much the guy wronged me, no matter how much Sam wronged Joe, we need to remember that just because he lied over here, or he you know, betrayed me over here, love covers a multitude of sins.
That's right.
And that's
Absolutely.
why we need to put
Love
on
covers a multitude of sins, Tim is sharing. And that is right. That is going to lead to the heart of Jesus' message. So that is great. And speaking of that, that's where we go to next in verse 39. Tanner, read chapter 5, verse 39.
39. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other cheek also.
Okay, so do not resist an evil person. Now, we're supposed to resist evil. And the translation in the King James is do not resist evil, which really doesn't make sense. The wording clearly is an individual. Now, it is do not resist an evil person. There's been, I think one Bible said do not resist the evil one. And again, yes, resist the evil one, but this whole context is talking about dealing with people. So do not resist an evil person. Like, we resist evil, but what is this? Is this talking about do not defend? What is resisting talking about? And that's what this next chapter, and we'll explain that. But it says, if anyone slaps you or strikes you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Now, some of you might be familiar with this, but it is so important, the word right in there, that Jesus, what did we learn about hands last time? Anybody remember? We were talking about a view of the Jews.
Well, the left hand was just unimportant.
Right. Everybody was right-handed. Didn't matter what you favored as a child, they would correct you. So, if Tanner and I are facing each other,
I'm scared.
and I am going to slap or strike, let's say strike, him on the right, wait, look straight at me. The right cheek. Look straight. I'm not going to hit you. Goodness. You're like my kids right now. All right. So if I'm going to strike him, now I'm a Jew. I'm only going to strike with my right hand because I am right-handed. That is the hand you punch with. And so what is the natural cheek I'm going to strike? His left. So this isn't I'm trying to knock you out act, because I can't like curve and come back here. What are we talking about? We're talking about a backhand, and in Jewish culture, that was an insult. Kind of like, the French have the gloves and they hit. In Jewish culture, if you wanted to, one of the worst insults you could do is backhand someone. That was like cussing them out or calling them a fool. If you wanted to fight someone and hurt someone, you didn't backhand them. You punched them. But if you wanted to insult someone, if someone strikes or slaps, that's why it says slaps, because the NIV tries to bridge translation with understanding. It is a backhand is what's going on here. So Jesus is saying, if any, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Now, we don't slap each other to insult each other these days. We may slap people for other reasons, wrong reasons. But really, what Jesus is saying is if someone insults you, not a casual insult, but if someone really insults you, then allow them to do it again without resisting. And so in this context, resisting means it's not talking about not defending yourself from a physical assault. Jesus isn't talking about a physical assault. He's talking about an insult. Even though we see that in our culture today, but honestly, that was not, you would not get charged with physical assault in the Jewish culture. That is a way to insult someone. And so what we're talking about is from an insult assault or a mental assault. Jesus saying, if someone is insulting you, do not resist them. What do you think he means by resist them? If you're resisting someone insulting you, what are you going to do? You get defensive. That's a great way to put it. Or insult them back. So you're either going to try to defend yourself and take it personally and your pride is hurt, or you're going to start insulting them back. That is resisting, allowing someone to insult you. you're going to resist their backhand and you're going to backhand them. And so, this is not easy to do, but Jesus is saying, you know what, if someone comes at you and insults you, certainly Jesus is not saying if someone comes and assaults you or assaults your family or assaults your wife or your husband, do nothing. Turn and allow them to continue. That's not what Jesus is saying at all. And certainly that's been taken out of context, both in Hollywood and everywhere, where that's what Christians say. Why aren't you turning the other cheek? Letting them punch. And some people have taken that literal, that we're supposed to just allow people to beat us up, but Jesus is talking about insults and not resisting. Where do Christians receive insults today? Where do we see it? Where do we get assaulted verbally today that might relate to having to, and some of us, let's be honest, some of us aren't good with letting an insult lie or not defending or not saying something back. But even those, hello, what's up, Caleb? But even those who struggle with that, I doubt they rarely feel good afterwards at what went down, where you still may not feel good at hearing those insults, but you did the right thing when you walk away from it. I don't know, where do we find today Christians are receiving insults?
Sometimes I feel like it comes from the pulpit.
Yeah.
Brent.
That's one of those things where you're talking right to me today, weren't you, Pastor? Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
And sometimes, to go along with what he said, sometimes it comes from our own body,
Yes.
Comes just from the people at our church. You think one minute, oh, well, this is a house of God and you're insulting me. It doesn't matter what they say, but it hits you right in the heart.
Right.
And then you go home and you stew over it.
Right. Certainly today, Christians, and probably more than we would ever want to admit to, Christians are insulted by other Christians within the church, certainly. Or within a competing church. They feel it, or, between Christians and getting competitive with what I believe or what I think is right or what my church does that yours doesn't or is better, those kind of things. Where else do we see Christians being attacked, verbally assaulted? Schools, absolutely. I told not too long ago from the pulpit, being mocked by a teacher before, and I know that definitely happens not only with teachers, which they're supposed to be neutral and professional, but doesn't happen. Some do, but some don't. But also, of course, kids, and from elementary school on up to college and beyond. So.
Kids and adults with disabilities.
Right.
Well, the education system is pretty heavy on the insult of your faith because hey, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
Can you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt? Well, no. God for the unknown. So.
Right. There's a thing called faith that keeps me from that. But you're right, and especially if they know, like if you work for a Christian business, and I remember I worked for a Christian guy who was building houses. He had his own construction crew, small crew, but he hired 10 guys, and I was just the grunt laborer. But there were some pretty rough crowd guys that were on his crew, but they didn't cuss. They didn't, they did cuss, but they didn't cuss while they were on the job. Like, he played Christian music. He was a very confident guy, contractor, and he set the tone for the job, and most of his crew were Christian. But when it's the opposite, you're working a secular job, and everyone knows they don't go to church, but they know you do, easy target, Yeah, that's true. How many have dealt with, to some degree, working in a place where you felt your faith was looked down upon? How many have ever worked that? Okay, a couple of you. Yeah. Where else? Where else do Christians get attacked for their faith, insulted? Thanksgiving's coming up. It ever happen around the dinner table with extended family? Never. And yeah, absolutely. And then certainly, at least I've heard online, Christians can be attacked. Don't ever, if there's like an ad for like a Christian devotional book that is just kind of a general ad on Facebook, don't look at the comments. It will just depress you. There are people that they see that and, I am going to thrash. And then how us Christians respond, or people claiming it, is definitely not. It's the eye for an eye mentality. It's not turning the other cheek, what Jesus asked us to do. And unfortunately, there are some people that they have not submitted to this teaching of Jesus. If you mess with me, I'm going to hit you back as hard. And if you're trying to make me look stupid, I'm going to make you look stupid. And that's not what Jesus asked us to do.
It's not just our faith.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of opinion divisions.
Right.
And I think people get a lot of hurt feelings and this scenario.
Right.
Where we may just be discussing an opinion.
Right.
But
and you're right. It's not just our faith, because there's a lot that gets associated with you. You're a Christian, well, therefore you're a Republican. Therefore you voted for Trump. Therefore you hate homosexuals. Therefore you don't believe in women's rights. All these things that, the world has deemed, or this is what Christians do, and so half the stuff you're getting blasted for may be completely lies of the enemy, and it's just, and you're on the hook for it. And you want to defend yourself. You want to set them straight, And I think there are times where we can defend something, but why are we defending? Are we defending for the truth? Or are we defending because our pride? Are we defending because we want to set them straight, and that's where it goes. You got to remember, Jesus sat in trial against the most corrupt, ridiculous, idiot politician. Herod was an idiot. And Jesus handled these Pharisees, these Sadducees, who were very intelligent and scheming with their plan. Jesus handled everyone. Jesus could have handled Pilate and Herod and all them, but what did he do? He just sat silent and let them say what they said. He didn't just turn the cheek; he turned wrists and his side and his feet.
Yeah.
That's
what I wonder in this discussion, because there's one thing to be personally insulted and not respond, but I think it gets a lot more muddy when it's someone's insulting Christianity or insulting God, and you feel like you need to then speak up. And so it's like, but at what point then when does it become retaliation rather than just, well, this is what you've heard it said, this is what the Bible actually says, kind of thing.
Or, with that kind of line of mentality, man, someone said something to your wife at work or to your husband, and I've had to chain Denise to the house before, because she thought I got treated unfairly and wrongly, and she wants to have words with a person, and,
Indeed.
Right. So, and that person may be in this room. No, just kidding. Not even in this church. Okay. All of you are like, oh no. All right, let's go on. Verse 40. Can you read verse 40, Tanner?
And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt,
here we go.
Hand over your coat as well.
We brought up Meredith brought up court, and so here we go. someone wants to shoot. Now remember, the shirt and the coat are just examples. These are just like these things. It's not only for your if it's good. They're not suing me for my shirt so I can take them down. No, that's not it. In fact, the shirt was kind of like long underwear of the day. The coat is what protected you from the elements. And even poor people, their most valuable thing they owned was their coat, because if they're sleeping outside, it's what protected. It was their shelter. And so Jesus is saying, and again, Jesus is giving an example. Jesus, he's teaching us to basically, it's not worth it to take someone to court. If someone wants to take your shirt, don't fight it. Hand over your coat as well. And that's pretty tough, especially if we're being done dirty, because certainly we live in a world where people are targeted, and those kind of things. This is, I don't think Jesus is dealing with a schemer. I think Jesus is dealing with people who have a broken relationship or something happens and you've got to deal with it. Do you take someone to court? Do you sue them? And basically what Jesus is trying to get us to do is, what did Jesus say was the greatest in heaven? It was the person who is the servant. Jesus is teaching us we're here to serve people. How are we serving people if we're battling in court with people? And the reality of today is someone takes you to court, someone can wipe you. I do think there are times when Christians have to go to court. But I think there are a lot of cases or situations where if we would have just been generous early, it may not have gone there. Or if we and really what I see is Jesus is saying, if Jesus is saying if someone wants to take your shirt and you give them the coat, you're really giving up your rights for someone else. That's what a servant really is I'm giving up my personal rights to serve you, to love on you. And these are, if anyone thinks Christianity is easy, it's not, because there are certain people that I don't want to give them my shirt, and I definitely don't want to give them my coat. But Christ is calling me to have a heart that doesn't insist on my own rights. My treasure is in Christ, not on the things of this earth, and it is not worth my heart, mind, and soul going through a dragged out court case for things that can be replaced, And so that's kind of,
I think the context there of talking about taking it to court is the assumption that you owe somebody your coat or your shirt.
right.
You owe somebody something, and Jesus is saying if you owe somebody something, and they want it evened out, give them more than they're asking for.
Right. Right.
Don't just pay them back what you owe them. If you wronged them,
Right.
Make it better than that. I think it goes back to the eye for the eye. Don't just give them one eye.
Right.
Two eyes. Don't just let them slap you once. Have them slap you twice.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, and that could very well be. That is a different vein from 39, where you are being mistreated without, certainly the implication of 39 isn't, well, you were owed that slap across the face, But, where Jesus takes this, certainly both sides of that could be. So that very may well be. Troy was basically pointing out, if you didn't hear at home, that if someone sues you, wants to sue you and take your shirt, maybe you owe that to them. And if you've wronged someone and you owe them, then you should pay them back and be generous with more because you've wronged. That's tough to know what he's doing, because it says if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, It doesn't say they have the right to, but maybe I like that. I like that.
Could be both.
I think both
Either
certainly
or.
apply. And then the next one, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, this is where somebody has won and has the right to make you do something. And certainly this definitely lines up with what Troy was saying there.
We're supposed to go 2 miles.
But yeah, so you owe someone, and this is a matter of what you owe them. You owe them officially 1 mile, and then you're going to give them 2. And there's kind of an implication with the insult, with all of this, that maybe someone is asking you unjustly. Maybe someone has won a ruling against you that was unfair, and now you're forced to. And what would your implication be if you were wrongly punished for something? Well, I'll do it, but I'm going to be kicking and screaming the whole way. And Jesus saying that's not how we serve people. If someone is forcing you to do something, well then, it reminds me of, a lot of people criticize the Bible because the Bible doesn't condemn slavery. Like, the Bible didn't start a revolution against slavery, but instead said this is how slaves and masters should treat each other in a way that is proper in God's eyes. Now, some people don't understand that slavery was different in Jesus' day. You could win back your freedom. There was set time, and often people that were slaves chose to go into slavery to get out of debt, and so total different than what happened in our country and other countries. But still, the instruction there was, hey, slaves, serve your masters as if serving the Lord. Masters, treat your slaves honorably and good. Remember, you have a master in heaven, and so you're supposed to. It's the same kind of thing here. And then verse 42 says, give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And this is, again, really doubling down on the generosity. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest, and I hate to say it during COVID, I almost didn't want to type this, but certainly as Christians, the battle for my rights and what I'm owed, and what is how do we balance that? How do we still carry the message of Jesus? At some point, it can't be about me, and so I'm not saying it's wrong to disagree with, governments or whatever, those kind of things, but I think there is a point where we can be consumed and obsessed over what I'm owed or what my rights are, to the point where we are not being the disciple of Christ, the servant of Christ, the person that's serving others. I mean, do we agree with that? Like, I'm not saying you can't be bothered or upset or disagree with the way you get treated. But I think there's a is that the cue for me to change the subject? But but would you agree that you can go too far with that? I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, yeah. And certainly we need the kind of relationship with God where the Holy Spirit can speak to us and know when it might be proper to speak on an individual's rights and when it's proper that to give up those rights in order to serve Christ. So it's a tough area.
Everyone's chomping at the bit to talk about it.
Well, 42 summarizes what our attitude should be in general. Give to people who ask you. Do not turn from the one who wants to borrow from you. And it doesn't say judge their intentions with borrowing. It doesn't say make them sign a paper or make sure they could be trusted to pay you back. We're just supposed to have an attitude of serving others. And let's be honest, I really think that if you are serving Christ, you will be taken advantage of. And we are not greater than our master. Certainly Christ was taken advantage of. I mean, Judas alone, what he did, Christ made himself vulnerable to that. He could see through it. We can't always see through it. He can deal with it in a way that's beyond us. But certainly being a Christian puts you in a place to be insulted, to have your rights removed, and to be mistreated and taken advantage of, But it's different than, there's some people that get taken advantage of because they're naive. I can be taken advantage of because I'm choosing to live like Christ, So there's certain people, well, I've forgiven them many times for this, I'm not saying we forgive, if someone's watching my kids and the kids burned themselves by putting their hands inside the oven because they weren't being watched, I can forgive that person, but they're not going to be watching my kids in my kitchen anymore, So, but certainly we can be taken advantage of. And there are people that aim at churches. I mean, I won't say any names, but a certain office manager at Grace Point, someone emailed her and just were really short, and I was out of town. I think I was fishing with Troy. You remember that? And she got hey, I need some Amazon gift cards for someone that was sick. I mean, this person knew
impersonating you.
Impersonating a pastor who needs some gift cards to give to a family. And Cindy felt, I said her name. Sorry, Cindy, if you're watching. She'll watch tomorrow when she's not here. I'm in trouble.
You are in
I'm
trouble.
in trouble. I hope I'm out of the office at this point. Yeah. Let's pray for Brent tomorrow. Right? Yeah, that's right. But, certainly wasn't her fault. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't check the email address of, if it's from Brent, it's from Brent, and that person, and they tried again, and then we had a little fun with that person. But it's just some people target Christians, and not just that was definitely me, not. Well, it was. We had fun with them. I didn't scam them back, so that would have been eye for an eye. So,
I was wondering how this verse 42 meshes with, don't be a lender or a borrower, but then it says,
yeah.
if somebody asks you to borrow something, let them borrow it.
Right.
But, it's always been my stance that, family member or friend wants to borrow something from me or needs to borrow some money or whatever, I'm not going to let them borrow it. I'm just going to give it to them.
I see what you're saying.
I don't.
Right.
That's something I wrote down. Have an attitude of serving others without expecting.
Right. And I think that blends, whether you tell them, hey, this is yours, I don't need it back, or whether you're just, here you go, but you're not expecting it back, If they do, so be it. Maybe they need to do that for themselves, or maybe they repay you in a different way, But I think either of those methods fits the heart of this, whether you just say, take it, or whether it's here, and, I'm going to pay you back. Hey, if you can, great. If not, that's fine too, or, hey, no expectation. I think, just however God leads you, as long as your heart and spirit is just to be generous. And obviously, again, God's called us to, we have families, or, maybe we have large families, or maybe our families are smaller, but we need to have a home and care for our spouse, and we have bills to pay and stuff. So, if someone says, hey, give me all the money in your bank account, well, Jesus said, that's different. But things we're able to give and let people borrow and to be generous.
Yeah.
All the matter of the condition of your heart.
Yeah, exactly. And it really does. And if you're justify why you can't let anyone borrow because, well, that's something I need, your heart isn't lined up, as Tim said, with where it needs to be.
Well, that's definitely a place I found myself in that Kara actually called out in me when we were dating. My parents were very good at teaching how to handle money, how to save, how to do all these things, because it's good biblically to be wise with your resources and all those things. And for some reason, I got to this place where my attitude always was, well, I can't give to that, I can't do that. I would tithe, but I can't do these extra things because I'm being a good steward of what I have, so that then I could be generous in the future. But then that generous future never really ended up being there. And we had some friends that they just need like $200 for something, and it was something really important. I was like, I really want to save that. Really? You can't help our friends when they're in need? I'm like, huh.
That was Kara that said really?
Oh, yeah. Basically. And so, but it's that attitude of generosity that can be hindered by our American, this is what I've worked for, and I'm being wise with my resources, which you should be, but it can go so far to where you're not being generous.
It goes back
anymore.
to it's my right to, this is mine.
Yeah.
This is what I'm owed for the work I put in, you know, and it comes back to what I have.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the church, if we see people that are, because unfortunately, I mean, let's just be real about the church. Jesus always was. Paul always was. But people can take advantage of each other in the church, unfortunately. And and there is a difference between being generous and giving, but also holding people accountable within the body, discipling people, letting them know, you know. And there may be people that ask and they just don't realize that they're taking advantage of people. I really think that sometimes people just aren't mature enough to understand, I'm taking advantage of this person, and we got to help. There's a way to love and to still be giving, but to also educate and disciple and help them. And sometimes people need to be held accountable because you can see that they're taking advantage of someone, you know, and so we still want to protect and those kind of things. So, okay, well, it's a tough thing. I mean, I think all of us would love to say, man, I got that down in life, and you know, but we can improve and we can get more and more like Jesus. And
because retaliating and holding on to what you have, that's just part. It feels like it's just part of how you live life.
Right.
It's natural.
Right. And Christ certainly modeled just all he was for others, you know, up to the cross. Okay. All right. How much time we got? We got a couple minutes. Let's just crack the kind of intro, if you would. This is your section.
Yep.
So now, here we go.
Yeah, and it's going to be another one of those situations where he's going to build on what he just talked about and go even deeper.
Right. And this is the last, well, at least here, the last you have heard that it was said. And so, do you want me to read, or you want
go
to
for it.
Okay, here we go. The whole thing.
Yeah, we'll give it.
All right.
Give an overview for
43. You have heard that it was said, "Love your neighbor and hate your enemy." Isn't that a great statement? But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and unrighteous. Certainly in Albany that is true. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Don't even pagans do that. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Okay, Jesus, that's an easy one to follow.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
Got that?
Meredith got that long ago.
Oh man, yeah, that's going to be a good kind of a culmination of the section. Be perfect. So, talking about loving your enemy and hating your enemy. Jesus says, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, which you might think, is that what the Old Testament said?
I don't remember that commandment.
Love your neighbor, hate your enemy. Well, so there's a couple ideas of where this could come from. Again, Brent set up talking about this is a crowd that was maybe a little more uneducated, and more of hearsay of Scripture. But there are Psalms like Psalm 139. Psalm 139, verse 21 and 22, which I think I actually preached on, not too long ago that includes this section that says, "Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies." What a great, encouraging psalm. There was one time in high school I texted my friend praying Psalm 139, 21, and 22 over you. And they clearly didn't read it because they said, "Thank you." But that's what happens when you grow up at a Christian school. But this psalm, and there are a lot of times in psalms where the psalmist will say things like that. Well, I hate people, but because they hate you, God. And the thing about the psalms is it's not always an instruction on how we're to live our lives as people of God. The psalms have real emotion and real places that people were at when they wrote those psalms.
Yeah.
So this psalm is not an instruction, a free pass to hate people, but this could be one place that people would cite to say, I hate those who hate God. But there are also, we've talked about the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in the 1900s that illuminated a lot of manuscripts for Scripture. You already talked about that.
You say 1900s as if that is such a long decade
time
ago. Or a century ago.
But what they also found is...
Could you imagine living in the 1900s?
That'd be
that
crazy.
would...
Hey, I was born in 94. Okay?
You were? Oh, you made it!
But they found a lot of manuscripts from biblical books, from books in the Bible, but they also found a lot of Jewish writings as well from around the time of Jesus. And so there was a scroll found called The Rules for the Community, which we talk a lot about how there was the law, and then there was basically the commentary of the law that said, well, this is how we interpret it, this is how we do it. Well, there was a popular one that included kind of an interpretation that said, love for the sons of light, love for the people of God, and hate for the sons of darkness, hate for people who were not the people of God. So it was not actually Scripture where this was found, but it was kind of one of those, this is how we interpret the law that we were given. Love the people of Israel, hate all the people out there. And you definitely see that attitude from the people of Israel in the Old Testament. So that could be another likely place that they would have heard this as well. But this was not an outright command from God.
And the thing is
people.
David was such a revered figure. Mm-hmm. If David is hating his enemies, then certainly I can hate my enemies. Even though, David is not a role model in every area of his life. Certainly he was. But... and Jesus, there was a few other these where they're taking one part of the law and another part. I mean, certainly love your neighbor. We know that. Jesus said that was the second greatest commandment of the Old Testament. And they just piece them together, so.
Yep. But Jesus says, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So we just talked about retaliation. He's going deeper than not just... not retaliating when someone wrongs you. It's going to go deeper than just holding back. It's going to go now to those enemies that you have, possibly the people that are actively wronging you. I want you to love them and pray for them. So it's not just about not treating people bad when you're treated bad, but let's go a step further and love those people.
And this is not in the Old Testament directly, but the heart of it is, I mean, think about Jonah. I don't want to go minister to those people. I don't want to go warn those people.
Yeah.
I hate, those are my enemies. I'm going to jump on a ship and run away. And when God makes a fish swallow you and barf you up on the shore and sends you back, that is, how is that
could not be more clear.
God saying, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's what he was doing with Jonah and so many other spots where people are resisting. And sometimes it wasn't pray for those who persecute you because of God's people having to remain God's people. And if the Ammonites or Philistines attack them, they are going to engage in warfare, but there are times it's going back to this personal level. You operating on your own when God is speaking to you, listening, and that includes how we respond to whatever we would label as an enemy. And only you can label who are your enemies. And maybe you would never say, well, that is my enemy. But I tell you what, the way you talk about them to other people at work, or the way you talk about them at home, or the way you get happy when bad things happen to them, or the way you get angry when good things happen to them. I mean, what is an enemy if not that person at work or school, or, you know, that neighbor who won't keep his leaves to his side. But, you know, what's that? Barking, yeah. Well, it doesn't say dogs. You can hate that dog. No, just kidding. But, you know, I mean, try not to justify how you're treating someone. Well, they're not my enemy, but, you know.
Yeah.
No,
I think that's a good stopping point.
Okay.
But I'll just leave you with 2 rhetorical questions if you want to ponder this until we get here next week.
All
when
right.
we finish this. Is kind of what you just said. Think about who is your enemy. If you don't have any enemies at all, maybe you don't. But just, I don't know, ponder on that. Ponder the difficult peoples in your life. Who are my enemies? And a big question, the question we're going to end the discussion of this section, I want to leave you with as well, is what do we do when we realize that we do hate someone? And how do we move from hate to love? Because it's not just, I hate them, okay, I don't.
now I love them. It's like little boys and girls. Oh, now you're my best friend. Now I hate you.
That's something to ponder, because Jesus is saying this is a huge thing. This is important. What do we do when we realize we hate someone, and how do we move from hate to love? Think about that this week, and we'll conclude.
Pick up there?
Yeah, we'll pick up and conclude this section of the Sermon on the Mount next week. Sound good?
Right. That sounds good.
All right.
All right. Who's praying us out this week? Tim, you want to dismiss us in prayer? Go ahead, buddy.
Lord, we just ask that you will work on each of our hearts, and those who struggle in hate, we ask, Lord, that you will just be with us and just break down any wall barrier.
That's right.
Lord, because nothing could stand in your way, Lord, and I ask that you just knock every wall down, Lord, that will hold us away from you, because you said in your word that there's no darkness in you in 1 John. And I pray, God, that we all will live in light all the time.
That's right.
And I pray, Father, that you will just be with all of us as we go home and go back to work or go back to wherever we're going the rest of the week. And I pray that you'll bring us back here safe on Sunday morning.
That's right.
And I just ask these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. God bless. Have a good week.